In this short video, I'll show you how to create an animation, a basic animation using Adobe Animate Edge. And so what I've done is I've opened up the Animate program, and it gives me a number of different options for creating new. I'm going to create a new, and I'm going to use ActionScript 3.0. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to bring me a window. I'm not worried about that. The default window is fine. The first thing I'm going to do though is I need to create an object that I want to move around. So on the layer that's here, that is I'm going to consider the background layer. And I'm even going to, and I'm down here in my timeline, and that's at the bottom of the screen. So I have a timeline, and I'm actually going to layer, I'm going to name that first layer. I'm just going to call this background. So I know that I'm not going to put anything on that background layer. Okay. So that really is the default. All of the files that I will create and all the files you should create should actually have a background layer. That's the one that is going to be the background scene. It could be trees if you're making the snowman project. It could be the moon if you're doing the mountains if you're doing the moon project. So we're going to start off. I've got my background layer, but I want to create another layer, and this one's going to be this one associated with the animation. So I've got background. I'm going to go down to my the lower portion of that timeline there. Click on the New Layer tab, and that comes up. I'm going to layer this. I'm just going to call this one Ball, and that's going to be the name of that layer. Now, that layer right there, that's where we're going to actually draw my shape. So I want to make sure I've got that ball layer highlighted, and I'm going to go over to my timeline, to my list of shapes, and I see one of the shapes is actually an oval shape. So I'm going to click on that oval shape, and I'm going to go over to my stage, and that's the main area here, and I'm going to drag out, and I'm going to create just a shape in the center there. If you wanted to, you could change the shape color by clicking on the center of it. When you click on the center of it, that is the fill color for it. And in my toolbar, I actually have one of the options down at the bottom, which is looks like a little paint bucket. When you roll your cursor over it, and any of the things that you leave your cursor on for a second, it'll tell you what it is. But you choose your fill color, and in this case, I'm going to make a kind of example like that basketball that it was the visual example there. So now I've got this shape, which basically I'm going to animate. I'm going to make it so it moves up and down on my stage. So one of the things I'm going to do is I have this, and I'm on my timeline. This is in the first frame, frame 1 on the timeline. And what I want to do is I want to make it so that the object moves, and I'm going to have it move over a period of time. So I'm going to have this move over 30 frames. So I'm going to click on my 30 there, okay? And I'm going to actually take and insert a frame in that. So you can do this in a number of different ways. You can either right click on it, or if you're on a Mac, you can control click on it and choose insert frame. If you do that, what that will do is take from frame 1 and fill in all the way to frame 30. And what it's doing is it's taking that exact same shape that you drew during frame 1 and draw that same one no matter what in all of the frames leading up to frame 30. So what is I now, on all of those frames, I basically have the exact same shape, which is the ball. Now, what I want to do next is I actually want to take and add the animation. And this is really all the simpler we're going to be doing with this process. We're going to add the animation here. So what I can do is I can actually control click on this if you're on a Mac, or you can actually create, go up to your options up at the top and choose insert. But I'm going to create a basic motion tween. And a motion tween actually asks me to do something very specific. It actually asks me to create this object as a symbol, okay? And a symbol basically is, in a sense, a locked shape. And with a symbol, I can do a lot of animation. Most of it's going to be dealing with motion, okay? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to change this over to a symbol. When I click on OK, it's going to say, okay, I created a symbol. It also added into my library over here in my tab. So I actually have a properties tab. I've got a library tab, and in my library tab, it actually created that symbol, which is the ball. So now that that's in there, I can actually look down in my scene here, in my timeline, and if I go over to frame 1, And I noticed that, okay, from frame 1, it's actually the frame 30 is all highlighted. So what I can do is if I look at it, it's all blue. Well, blue means that I've got the process started for creating an animation. If I take and click my cursor on frame 30, and if I drag my shape to a location on the stage, I'm just going to drag it up there, you'll notice that it puts a series of dots after it. And what those dots mean is that there's an animation that's going to occur during those dots, and it's going to start at where I had the starting point, and it's going to end at the end of that point. Okay, so wherever I placed my little object at frame 30, that is where it's going to take and push the animation. And I can test this or try it out by literally using this little red line in a box and dragging it back and forth across the timeline, and you'll see that it moves. And you'll notice those dots. Those dots represent the frames that are associated with this. So if there's 30 frames that I'm making this occur over, well, then there's 30 dots that I'm dealing with here. So if I'm going to take and have this object move up and down, like I was going to do with the, oops, I meant to move just the end frame there. If I'm going to have this move up and down, then I'm just going to click on frame 30. And now I'm going to take and I can manipulate this. So I'm going to just have this move straight up and down. I'm just going to drag it over there. And so now if I scrub my playhead back and forth, it goes just straight up and down. Okay. And this is just like the example that we had in the basketball bouncing. And if I wanted to modify frame 1, I'm just going to select frame 1. And what I'm doing with this is I'm clicking off of it first so that it's kind of deselected it. And then I go back in and click on frame 1. And at that point, I actually can move frame 1 down. And if I wanted to have it bounce off the bottom there, I could have it bounce off the bottom. So if I take and run the playhead, up, it bounces up and down on there. Now, remember, whenever you build anything with Animate, you can certainly move the playhead. Well, that's what we call this, scrubbing the playhead back and forth. That will certainly give you a chance to kind of test it for yourself while you're building it. However, a program in Animate is really never truly tested until you really test it. So really testing it means that you go up to your control, up in the top menu bar, go up to control, and you're going to go down to where it says test movie. And we're going to test movie inside of Animate to start off with. So when I do that, it pops up a little window, and yeehaw, it goes up from the top and goes down, bounces up and down there. Now, I could actually make this so this bounces up and then bounces back down again. But the basic animation is to literally have it go from 1 up. And this is literally just like the example that we had in the Moodle stage in Sprint 9. Now, if I wanted to take and have this come back down again, what I could do is copy all these frames. So if I click on the first one, hold down the Shift key and click on the frame 30, it highlights everything. And I can do my Control C, and I'm going to take and I'm going to copy frames. Now, if I want this to now take, and after frame 30, it's going to take and do something different. Well, I'm going to click on frame 31, click on my Control button again, and then I'm going to choose Paste Frames. And when I do that, it's going to create the exact same thing again. So if I did this, it's going to go up to frame 30, pop all the way down the bottom, and do it again. Well, that will certainly allow me to create the animation. But if I want to create the effect of it bouncing up to the top, bouncing down, then bouncing back up again, then on frame 31, I'm going to click on frame 31. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and then click on frame 60. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control click or right click on there, and I'm going to choose to reverse frames. So basically what this is doing is it's going to take and reverse the action of it. Okay, so I can actually go down here and where's my option for this one? Reverse keyframes. So now what it's going to do is it's going to take and bounce down and then bounce back up again. So I can test this, and I would choose Test Movie and Animate, bounce up, bounce down. And it will keep on doing that, running back and forth, because in our program, we didn't set up our timeline to stop. we're going to cover that in our very next movie. So this movie, literally all we were covering was literally making it so that the object made a simple animation, and the animation that we made was to create a tween, and the tween was a shape tween. I'm sorry, was a motion tween. Okay, so that's the first process that everyone needs to create. That'll get you used to using an object, creating a symbol, and then creating an animation. That's it for this video.